When your wife fires you by email at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, you know romance is officially deceased. I was in my home gym, pounding the heavy bag like it owed me money, when my phone buzzed with the corporate kiss-off. Contract terminated effective immediately. Do not report to office tomorrow. HR will contact regarding personal items. No signature, no explanation, just corporate ice from the woman who used to trace hearts on my chest. I wiped the sweat from my face and laughed. Actually laughed. Because after 15 years of marriage and 10 years of building Solace Corporation from a two-person startup into a tech empire worth $47 million, this was how it ended. Not with a conversation, not even with the courtesy of a phone call, just a sterile email that could have been sent to any terminated employee. The irony wasn't lost on me. Alara Solace, CEO of Solace Corporation, had just fired Jared Solace, the man who owned 87% of the company she ran. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. Your brother fits us better than you, in every way. Attached was a photo of Rick sitting in my old office, feet propped up on the mahogany desk I'd picked out, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's rent. He was grinning at the camera like he'd just won the lottery. I stared at the message for a full minute, letting the implications sink in. My wife, my brother, my office, my company. Well, I said to my reflection in the gym mirror, guess I should have taken those team-building retreats more seriously. But here's the thing about being underestimated your entire life. You learn to see things other people miss. While everyone assumed I was just the silent tech guy who fixed problems and wrote code, I was actually the one who wrote every contract, every shareholder agreement, every clause that governed how Solace Corporation operated, including the clause that gave me final authority over all major decisions. I walked upstairs to my home office and pulled out the original shareholder agreement. The document I'd drafted when we incorporated, back when Alara was still pretending to love me, and Rick was still pretending to be my loyal brother. Back when I was naive enough to think family meant something. Page 17, Section 4, Subsection B. Primary shareholder maintains 87% controlling interest and final approval authority over all executive decisions, including but not limited to personnel changes, financial transfers, and operational modifications. I'd written that clause to protect us from hostile takeovers. Turns out, I'd actually written it to protect myself from hostile family members. My phone rang. Alara's contact photo filled the screen, a picture from our honeymoon in Cabo, back when her smile reached her eyes instead of stopping at her professionally whitened teeth. Jared, we need to talk. Do we? Because your text was pretty clear. Rick fits you better, in every way. I let the words hang in the air like smoke. Congratulations, by the way. When's the wedding? Don't be dramatic. This is business. Business? I pulled up my banking app and started scrolling through our joint accounts. Funny thing about business, Alara. It requires actual authority to make decisions, which, according to our corporate structure, you don't have without my signature. Silence on her end. I could practically hear the gears turning in her head as she realized what I was implying. You wouldn't. Stay with him, I said, my voice steady as concrete. I'm filing for divorce and taking my 87% of the company. I hung up and immediately called our lawyer, then our accountant, then the corporate attorney who'd helped us structure the business. By midnight, I'd frozen every joint account, triggered the clause requiring my signature for all executive decisions, and filed a formal complaint with the board of directors citing Alara's affair as a conflict of interest that compromised her ability to lead the company. I also changed every lock in our house. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Alara had discovered that her authority as CEO had been suspended pending a board review. Rick had discovered that his brand new employment contract was void without my approval, and the entire executive team had discovered that they couldn't access any company accounts or make any operational decisions without my explicit authorization. I made coffee and read through the messages while sitting in my kitchen, watching the sunrise paint the sky orange and pink. Most of the texts were variations of "call me immediately" and "we need to fix this." But one stood out. It was from my daughter Kayla, away at college. "Dad, what's going on? Mom is freaking out and Uncle Rick won't stop calling me." I typed back, "Your mother decided she preferred your uncle to your father, in business and in bed. I'm correcting that mistake." Her response came immediately. "OMG, Dad, TMI, but also, good for you." At least someone in this family still had a backbone. By 9 a.m., my phone was ringing again. This time it was Linda Voss, the lead board member and a woman who'd built her fortune by being smarter and more ruthless than everyone else in the room. "Jared, you magnificent bastard. I always knew you had teeth. Question is, are you planning to use them? That depends on how badly they want to keep bleeding. Board meeting, tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Come prepared to either destroy everything or save it. Your choice." She hung up, and I found myself grinning for the first time in months. I spent the rest of the day gathering evidence. Email threads where Alara discussed removing Jared from operational oversight. Bank records showing transfers to accounts I'd never authorized. HR documents detailing Rick's hiring process, which had bypassed every protocol I'd established. But the real treasure was hidden in Alara's laptop, which she'd left connected to our shared cloud storage. Apparently, when you're busy conducting an affair and a corporate coup, you sometimes forget basic digital security. The folder labeled Transition Plan contained everything I needed. Detailed strategies for marginalizing my role in the company. Financial projections that assumed my eventual buyout at a fraction of the company's actual value. And most damning of all, a forged addendum to our prenuptial agreement that would have given her claim to my shares in the event of a divorce. She'd been planning this for months. I printed everything, organized it into a presentation that would make a prosecutor weep with joy, and then did something I hadn't done in years. I called my old friend Mike Rizzo. Mike owned a boxing gym downtown, the kind of place where guys with broken noses taught kids how to throw proper punches, and old fighters shared stories about the ones that got away. He'd been trying to get me back in the ring for years, claiming I needed to remember what it felt like to fight. "Jared, tell me you're finally ready to stop being a corporate pretty boy and start throwing some punches." "Actually, Mike, I think I'm about to throw the biggest punch of my life. But I need some advice first." "Advice? From me? Kid, I know how to hit things and how to avoid getting hit. That's about it." "That's exactly what I need to know." We met at his gym that evening. The place smelled like sweat, leather, and decades of determination. Mike was in his 60s now, gray-haired and thick around the middle, but his eyes still had the sharp focus of a man who'd never backed down from a fight. "So," he said, wrapping my hands with practiced efficiency, "your wife screwing your brother and trying to steal your company, and you want to know how to hit back without getting hit yourself. That's about the size of it. First rule of fighting, never telegraph your punches, let them think they know what's coming, then hit them from an angle they didn't see." He finished the rap and stepped back. "Second rule, once you start swinging, don't stop until they're down. Half measures get you hurt. And the third rule?" Mike grinned, showing teeth that had seen better decades. "Make sure you're still standing when the dust settles." I spent an hour working the heavy bag, letting muscle memory take over while my mind processed everything that had happened. Each punch was a problem solved, each combination a strategy refined. By the time I left the gym, I knew exactly how I was going to destroy them. The board meeting was held in the conference room on the 32nd floor of the Meridian building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I arrived 15 minutes early, set up my presentation, and waited. Alara walked in first, wearing her power suit like armor and her confidence like a mask. She'd brought Rick with her, which was interesting. Also interesting was the fact that she'd brought Harper Mills, her best friend, and our head of public relations. "Jared," Alara said, taking her seat at the head of the table, I'm glad you're here. We need to resolve this situation before it damages the company. Oh, it's going to damage the company, I said, connecting my laptop to the presentation screen. Question is whether the damage is surgical or catastrophic. Linda Voss entered with the other board members, Thomas Chen from our legal department, Jennifer Walsh from finance, and David Park, our biggest external investor. They took their seats with the careful neutrality of people who knew they were about to witness either an execution or a resurrection. Before we begin, Alara said, I want everyone to understand that Jared is acting out of personal vindictiveness. His inability to separate his emotions from business decisions is exactly why we needed to make a change in leadership structure. Leadership structure? I clicked to my first slide, a copy of the original shareholder agreement. You mean the structure where I own 87% of the company and you serve at my pleasure as CEO? That's an outdated arrangement that doesn't reflect current operational realities. Current operational realities. I clicked to the next slide, a screenshot of her text message. Like the reality where you're conducting an affair with my brother and using company resources to facilitate it? The room went quiet. Harper shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Rick stared at his hands. Personal relationships have nothing to do with business performance, Alara said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. Don't they? I clicked through a series of slides showing Rick's employment contract, his salary, and his complete lack of qualifications for any position in our company. You hired my brother at a salary of $200,000 annually for a position that doesn't exist, reporting directly to you, with access to proprietary information and client databases, all without board approval or shareholder consent. Jennifer Walsh leaned forward. Is this accurate? It gets better. I clicked to the next slide. Bank records showing transfers to Rick's personal account. These payments were classified as consulting fees for work that was never performed, contracts that were never signed, and deliverables that were never delivered. Thomas Chen was taking notes now, his expression grim. Furthermore, I continued, clicking to the forged prenup addendum, Mrs. Salas attempted to create fraudulent legal documents that would have transferred my shares to her in the event of divorce proceedings. Documents that were backdated and notarized by someone who wasn't present during the original signing. The silence in the room was absolute. This is ridiculous, Alara said, but her voice cracked slightly. Jared is manufacturing evidence to support his emotional breakdown. Emotional breakdown? I clicked to my final slide, a detailed financial analysis of the company's performance over the past year. Let's talk about performance, shall we? Under your leadership, we've lost 3 major clients, our development timeline has slipped by 6 months, and our profit margins have decreased by 15%. Meanwhile, you've increased executive compensation by 22% and hired your lover at a salary that exceeds our senior developers. Linda Voss cleared her throat. Mrs. Salas, do you have a response to these allegations? Alara looked around the table, seeing the same thing I was seeing, board members who were no longer on her side. I motioned for an immediate vote of no confidence, David Park said quietly. Seconded, Jennifer Walsh added. All in favor? 5 hands went up. Only Harper abstained. Motion carries. Mrs. Salas, your authority as CEO is hereby revoked pending a full investigation into these allegations. Alara stood up slowly, her face pale, but her spine straight. This isn't over, Jared. Yes, I said, closing my laptop. It is. She left the room with Rick trailing behind her like a lost puppy. Harper lingered for a moment, giving me a look I couldn't quite read, then followed them out. Well, Linda said after the door closed. That was entertaining. Question is, what happens now? Now we clean house, I said, and we rebuild this company the right way. But as I packed up my presentation materials, I couldn't shake the feeling that Alara's parting words weren't just empty defiance. She'd been planning this coup for months. People like her didn't give up after one setback. They regrouped, they found new angles of attack, and they came back swinging. 3 days after the board meeting, I woke up to find my face on the front page of the business section. The headline read, "Tech Executive's Messy Divorce Threatens Company Stability." The article painted me as an unstable husband using corporate warfare to settle personal scores. The byline belonged to Marcus Webb, a business journalist I'd never heard of. But the quotes were from people I knew very well. Jared Salas has always been volatile, an unnamed company source was quoted as saying. His technical skills are adequate, but he lacks the emotional intelligence necessary for leadership. The board is concerned about his ability to make rational decisions during this personal crisis. Another source, identified only as a longtime family friend, added, "This is really sad to watch. Jared built his entire identity around being the technical genius behind the company, but he's never understood the human side of business. Ilara was the real driving force behind their success." I poured coffee and read the entire article twice. It was a masterpiece of character assassination, carefully crafted to make me look like a brilliant but unstable engineer who couldn't handle being replaced by more competent leadership. The problem was, it was working. By noon, I'd received calls from 2 major clients expressing concerns about the company's stability. Our stock price had dropped 12%, and 3 of our senior developers had submitted their resignations. My phone rang. Linda Voss. "Jared, we need to talk. The board is getting nervous." "About what?" "We removed a compromised CEO and exposed financial irregularities. That should make them more confident, not less." "It would, if the story stayed internal. But now it's public, and it looks like you're using the company as a weapon in your divorce. That makes investors very unhappy." I walked to my home office window and stared out at the lake behind our house. The water was gray and choppy, matching my mood. "What are you suggesting?" "Damage control. Fast. Either you find a way to stabilize this situation, or the board is going to have to consider other options." "Other options like what?" "Like accepting Ilara's offer to buy out your shares at current market value." I nearly dropped the phone. "She made an offer?" "This morning. She's assembled a group of investors willing to purchase your 87% stake for $32 million. It's a fair price given the current circumstances." Fair price? For a company I'd built from nothing that was worth at least $50 million on a bad day. A company I'd bled for, sacrificed for, and nearly destroyed my health building. "Tell her no." "Jared, be reasonable. This is a good exit strategy. Take the money, start fresh, avoid a prolonged battle that could destroy everything you've built." "Linda, with all due respect, go to heck." I hung up and immediately called Thomas Chen in legal. "Tom, I need you to look into something. That article in today's paper, I want to know who talked to the reporter and what they were paid to say it." "Jared, I'm not sure that's—" "I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. I'm asking you to protect the company from a coordinated attack on its primary shareholder. That's literally your job." There was a pause. "I'll see what I can find." Next, I called Jennifer Walsh in finance. "Jen, I need a complete audit of all payments made to external consultants, PR firms, and media companies in the last 6 months. That's going to take some time. You have until tomorrow morning." "Jared, that's not realistic." "Then hire help. Bill it to my personal account if you have to, but I want those records." I spent the rest of the afternoon making calls, trying to shore up client relationships and reassure nervous investors. It was exhausting work, made worse by the fact that I had to constantly defend myself against accusations I couldn't directly refute without sounding defensive. By evening, I was mentally drained and physically tense. I decided to head to Mike's gym and work off some frustration. The place was busier than usual, with a mix of serious fighters and casual fitness enthusiasts. Mike was working with a young kid, maybe 16, teaching him how to slip punches. "Keep your hands up, Tommy. Protect yourself at all times, because your opponent sure isn't going to do it for you." Good advice for boxing. Better advice for life. Mike spotted me and waved me over. "Jared, perfect timing. I was just telling Tommy here about the importance of defensive strategy. Yeah? What kind of strategy? The kind where you let your opponent tire themselves out throwing wild punches, then you counter with something they don't see coming. Mike grinned. Speaking of which, how's your corporate boxing match going? About like you'd expect. They hit me with a sucker punch in the media, and now everyone thinks I'm the bad guy. Media, huh? That's not fighting. That's politics. Whole different game. I wrapped my hands and started working the heavy bag, letting each punch carry some of the day's frustration. After 20 minutes, I was sweating hard but thinking more clearly. Mike, you ever deal with people who fight dirty? Kid, I've been in this game for 40 years. I've seen every dirty trick in the book. Low blows, rabbit punches, guys who put stuff on their gloves. He shrugged. Thing is, dirty fighters usually have one weakness. Which is? They're not used to people fighting back the same way. They expect their opponents to follow the rules while they break them. So when someone starts playing by their rules, instead of the official ones, they panic. I stopped punching and looked at him. You're saying I should fight dirty too. I'm saying you should fight to win, and if your opponents have already decided the rules don't apply, then maybe the rules don't apply. I drove home thinking about that conversation. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made a decision. If Alara wanted to play dirty, I'd show her what dirty really looked like. I spent the next 3 hours in my home office, digging through files I'd been collecting for months without really knowing why. Email threads about client meetings I hadn't been invited to, financial reports that didn't match the numbers I was seeing, personnel decisions that had been made without my input. At 2 a.m., I found what I was looking for. Hidden in a folder labeled Marketing Materials was a contract between Solace Corporation and Meridian Media Group, a PR firm I'd never heard of. The contract was for reputation management and strategic communications at a cost of $15,000 per month. The contract had been signed by Alara 6 months ago. I cross-referenced the payments with Jennifer's preliminary financial records. Meridian Media Group had been paid $90,000 over the past 6 months, all classified as marketing expenses. A quick internet search revealed that Meridian Media Group was owned by Harper Mills, Alara's best friend, our head of public relations, the woman who'd sat quietly through the board meeting, watching everything unfold. I leaned back in my chair and laughed out loud. Harper hadn't just been Alara's friend and ally. She'd been her co-conspirator, using her position as our PR head to coordinate the media attack while simultaneously billing the company for the privilege. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part was in the contract's fine print, which specified that all communications and strategy documents would be retained by Meridian Media Group for a period of 7 years for quality assurance purposes, which meant Harper had kept records of everything. I grabbed my phone and called Thomas Chen, not caring that it was nearly 3 a.m. Tom, it's Jared. I need you to draft a subpoena request for all documents related to Meridian Media Group's contract with our company. Jared, do you know what time it is? I know exactly what time it is. It's time to stop playing defense. The next morning, I arrived at the office for the first time since being terminated. Security tried to stop me, but I reminded them that I was still the majority shareholder and had every right to access company property. I walked straight to Harper's office. She was on the phone when I knocked, but she quickly ended the call when she saw me. Jared, I wasn't expecting you. I bet you weren't. I closed the door behind me and took a seat across from her desk. We need to talk about Meridian Media Group. Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. I'm not sure what you mean. I mean the PR firm you own that's been billing our company $15,000 a month to coordinate media attacks against me. I pulled out a printed copy of the contract and placed it on her desk. This Meridian Media Group. Harper stared at the contract for a long moment, then looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not the friendly, supportive face she'd worn for years, but something colder and more calculating. You always were too smart for your own good, Jared. Not smart enough, apparently. I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted. Trust. Harper laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you remember the Whitmore account presentation 3 years ago? I frowned, trying to place the reference. Vaguely. Why? Because you humiliated me in front of the entire board, my presentation, my research, my strategy, and you stood up and tore it apart piece by piece, made me look like an amateur. The memory came back slowly. Harper had proposed a PR campaign that would have cost nearly $200,000 and delivered minimal results. I'd pointed out the flaws in her analysis and suggested a more cost-effective approach. That was business, Harper. Nothing personal. Nothing personal? Her voice rose slightly. You destroyed my credibility in that room, made me look incompetent in front of people whose respect I'd spent years earning, and then you acted like it was just another day at the office. So this is revenge? All of this, Ilara, Rick, the media campaign, because I criticized your presentation? Because you've spent years treating people like disposable assets. Ilara, me, even your own brother. You build things and break people, and you never even notice the damage you leave behind. I stared at her, trying to reconcile this bitter, angry woman with the friend I thought I'd known for years. You orchestrated all of this, the affair, the coup attempt, everything. I provided opportunities. Ilara was already unhappy with your marriage. Rick was already jealous of your success. I just helped them see that they deserved better. And the media campaign? Insurance, in case the board didn't make the right decision. Harper leaned forward, her eyes hard. You want to know the truth, Jared? Everyone in this company knows you're brilliant, but they also know you're arrogant, controlling, and completely oblivious to how your actions affect other people. I just helped them find the courage to do something about it. I stood up slowly, taking the contract with me. Well, Harper, you're about to find out how I affect people when I'm actually trying to hurt them. I walked out of her office and straight to the conference room, where I called an emergency board meeting. 2 hours later, I presented evidence of Harper's conflict of interest, her fraudulent billing practices, and her coordination of the media attack. I also presented phone records showing extensive communication between Harper, Ilara, and Rick in the weeks leading up to my termination. The board voted unanimously to terminate Harper's employment and pursue legal action for breach of fiduciary duty. But I wasn't done. That afternoon, I held a press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 days ago, you read an article questioning my fitness to lead this company. Today, I want to share some facts that weren't included in that story. I presented evidence of the conspiracy, the fraudulent contracts, and the coordinated attempt to steal my company. I named names, showed documents, and laid out a timeline that painted a clear picture of corporate sabotage. The real question, I concluded, isn't whether I'm fit to lead this company. The question is whether we're going to allow corporate thieves to use media manipulation and personal relationships to steal what they couldn't earn. The press conference was carried live on 3 local stations and streamed online. Within hours, the narrative had completely shifted. By evening, I'd received calls from 2 clients apologizing for their earlier concerns. Our stock price had recovered most of its losses, and Ilara's investor group had quietly withdrawn their buyout offer. I was in my home office, reviewing the day's developments, when my phone rang. Ilara. You think you've won? She said without preamble. I think I've exposed the truth. The truth? The truth is that you're a cold, calculating man who destroys anyone who threatens his control. Harper was right about that. Harper was a thief and a liar, just like you. I loved you once, Jared. Truly loved you. But living with someone who treats everything like a puzzle to solve and everyone like an asset to manage, it slowly erodes something inside you. I found myself without a response to that. This isn't over, she continued. You may have won this round, but I'm not going away. Neither is Rick. We're going to keep fighting until we get what we deserve. And what exactly do you think you deserve? Everything you took from us. Everything you never appreciated while you had it. The line went quiet, and I realized she'd hung up. I sat in my office for a long time after that, staring out at the lake and thinking about what she'd said, about being cold and calculating, about treating people like resources. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had become someone who saw everything through the lens of problems and solutions, assets and liabilities. But if that was true, then Alara and Rick and Harper had made one critical error in judgment. They'd forgotten that in my world, they weren't assets anymore. They were problems. And I was very, very good at solving problems. 2 weeks after the press conference, I thought I'd won. The media narrative had shifted in my favor, the board was solidly behind me, and Alara had moved out of our house. Rick had slunk back to whatever hole he'd crawled out of, and Harper was facing a lawsuit that would likely bankrupt her. I should have known it was too easy. The first sign of trouble came from an unexpected source. My daughter Kayla. She called on a Thursday evening, crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Dad, you have to take it down. Please, just take it down." "Take what down, sweetheart?" "The video. It's everywhere. All my friends have seen it. I can't go to class. I can't go anywhere." My stomach dropped. "What video?" "You don't know? Oh God, you really don't know." She sent me a link to a social media post that had been shared over 10,000 times. The video showed me at Harper's office, but the audio had been edited to make it sound like I was threatening her physically. Strategic cuts made my words sound menacing and unstable. "You're about to find out how I affect people when I'm actually trying to hurt them," my voice said in the video, but without the context of our conversation about business consequences. The caption read, "Tech CEO threatens female employee who exposed his corruption. This is what toxic masculinity looks like in corporate America." The post had been shared by dozens of influential accounts, each adding their own commentary about abuse of power and workplace intimidation. My name was trending on 3 different platforms, and none of it was good. "Dad, people are saying horrible things about you, about our family. Someone posted our address online." I closed my eyes and tried to think. "Kayla, listen to me. This video is edited. It's taken completely out of context. I know that, but nobody else cares. They just see what they want to see." She was right, of course. In the age of viral outrage, context was irrelevant. The edited video confirmed what people wanted to believe, that I was an abusive corporate bully who threatened women. "Where are you right now?" "At Mom's apartment. She says I should stay here until this blows over." "Your mother's apartment?" "Yeah, she's renting a place downtown. Uncle Rick is here too." Of course he was. After I hung up with Kayla, I spent 2 hours trying to trace the source of the video. The original post had come from an account called Corporate Whistleblower, with no identifying information and a creation date of 3 days ago. But the real damage was being done by the accounts that had amplified it. Professional activists, feminist organizations, and business ethics groups had all shared the video with their own commentary. Each share added another layer of outrage and another 1,000 viewers. My phone started ringing, reporters wanting comments, board members expressing concern, clients asking questions. Linda Voss called at midnight. "Jared, we have a problem." I noticed. 3 major clients have suspended their contracts pending investigation of these allegations. The board is getting pressure from investors to take action. "What kind of action?" "The kind where you step down as majority shareholder and accept a buyout. Based on an edited video? Based on the perception that you're a liability to the company's reputation. Fair or not, that's the reality we're dealing with." I hung up and poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey. Then I sat in my living room and tried to figure out how everything had gone wrong so quickly. The answer came to me around 2 a.m. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about completely destroying me as a person, not just as a business owner. The edited video wasn't designed to hurt the company. It was designed to make me unemployable anywhere. Ilara wasn't trying to steal my business anymore. She was trying to make sure I had nothing left. The next morning, I called Mike Rizzo. "Mike, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." "Shoot." "Am I the kind of man who would threaten a woman?" There was a pause. "Jared, in all the years I've known you, I've seen you angry exactly twice. Both times you got quiet and walked away. You're a lot of things, but you're not a bully. Then why is everyone so quick to believe I am? Because people love a villain, especially when the villain used to be successful, makes them feel better about their own lives. So what do? Same thing you do in the ring when someone sucker punches you. You get back up and you hit them back twice as hard." I spent the morning developing a strategy. If Ilara wanted to play the social media game, I'd give her a game she wouldn't forget. First, I hired a digital forensics expert to analyze the edited video and create a report showing exactly how it had been manipulated. The expert, a woman named Dr. Sarah Martinez, was able to identify 17 separate audio edits and provide timestamps showing where content had been removed. Second, I hired a private investigator to trace the social media accounts that had initially shared the video. I wanted to know if there were financial connections between those accounts and anyone in Ilara's circle. Third, I did something I'd never done before. I created my own social media accounts and started telling my side of the story. "My name is Jared Solis," I wrote in my first post. 3 days ago, someone posted an edited video designed to make me look like a corporate bully who threatens women. I want to share the full, unedited conversation so you can judge for yourself. I posted the complete audio recording of my conversation with Harper, along with documentation of her fraudulent contracts and her role in the conspiracy against me. The response was immediate and polarized. Half the comments supported me, calling the edited video a hit job and praising me for fighting back. The other half accused me of trying to silence a whistleblower and called for boycotts of my company. But something interesting happened over the next few days. As more people listened to the full audio and read the documentation, the narrative started to shift again. Several prominent accounts that had initially shared the edited video posted corrections and apologies. More importantly, 3 journalists started investigating the story behind the story. They wanted to know who had created the edited video and why. The answer came from an unexpected source. My private investigator, a former police detective named James Morrison, called me on Monday morning with news. I traced the original post to an IP address registered to a digital marketing company called Apex Strategies. Guess who owns Apex Strategies? Tell me. Richard Solis, your brother? I sat down heavily. Rick owns a marketing company? Incorporated it 6 months ago, specializes in reputation management and social media campaigns. He's been running it out of a rented office space downtown. The same office building where Ilara has her apartment? 2 floors apart. The pieces started falling into place. Rick hadn't just been Ilara's lover and co-conspirator. He'd been her digital warfare specialist, using his marketing company to coordinate the media attacks against me. There's more, Morrison continued. I found financial records showing payments from Ilara's personal account to Apex Strategies, $50,000 over the past 3 months. Can you prove the connection to the edited video? Working on it. But I did find something else interesting. Rick's been in contact with several other business owners who've had disputes with their partners. He's been offering his services to help them manage difficult situations. My brother had turned corporate sabotage into a business model. That afternoon, I called another press conference. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 weeks ago I exposed a conspiracy to steal my company through fraudulent contracts and media manipulation. Today, I want to show you how deep that conspiracy actually goes. I presented evidence of Rick's marketing company, his payments from Ilara, and his role in creating and distributing the edited video. I also revealed that he'd been offering similar services to other business owners facing partnership disputes. This isn't just about my company or my marriage, I said. This is about a coordinated effort to weaponize social media and destroy people's reputations for profit. My brother and my ex-wife have turned character assassination into a business model. The press conference generated significant coverage, but the real impact came from an unexpected source. One of the other business owners Rick had approached came forward with recordings of their conversations, where Rick explicitly described his methods for destroying problematic partners through social media campaigns. Within 48 hours, Rick's apartment had been raided by federal investigators looking into potential wire fraud and extortion charges. But Alara wasn't done fighting. She held her own press conference the next day, appearing with a prominent women's rights attorney. "My husband is a powerful man who's used to getting his way," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "When I tried to stand up to his controlling behavior, he systematically destroyed everyone who supported me. He's turned his brother into a scapegoat and used his wealth and influence to silence anyone who challenges him." It was a masterful performance. She appeared vulnerable and sympathetic, the victim of a powerful man's revenge. The attorney beside her spoke about patterns of abuse and the difficulty women face when challenging male-dominated corporate structures. Several women's organizations rallied to her support. Protesters gathered outside my office building. Someone spray-painted "abuser" on my car. I was losing the public relations battle again, and this time it felt personal in a way that business disputes never had. That evening, I was sitting in my home office, staring at social media posts calling for my resignation, when my phone rang. It was Kayla. "Dad, I need to tell you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" "Mom asked me to say some things about you, to reporters, about how you were controlling and angry at home." My heart sank. And I told her no, because it's not true. You were never controlling or angry. You were just absent, always working, always focused on the company, but you never hurt anyone. Thank you for that. Dad, there's something else. I overheard Mom and Uncle Rick talking. They're planning something big, something that's supposed to end this whole thing. What kind of something? I don't know. But Mom said after this weekend you won't be able to fight back anymore. After I hung up, I sat in the darkness of my office, trying to figure out what they might be planning. What could they do that would be worse than what they'd already done? The answer came to me slowly, like a cold realization creeping up my spine. They were going to accuse me of something criminal. Everything they'd done so far had been about business disputes and personal relationships. But if they could make people believe I'd committed an actual crime, harassment, threats, maybe even assault, then no amount of evidence or explanation would save me. I called Morrison immediately. "I need you to do something for me. I need complete surveillance on Alara and Rick. Video, audio, everything. Legal surveillance," I added quickly. "I think they're planning to frame me for something." "What kind of something?" "I don't know yet, but whatever it is, I want proof that it's fabricated. That's going to be expensive. I don't care what it costs." I hung up and walked to my bedroom window, looking out at the lake behind my house. The water was black under the cloudy sky, reflecting nothing. Somewhere out there, the people I'd once loved were planning my complete destruction. Not just my business or my reputation, but my freedom. I'd thought this was about money and power and revenge. I was beginning to realize it was about something much more dangerous. It was about survival. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. I discovered it completely by accident on Friday morning, when I stopped by my office early to pick up some files. The building was mostly empty, just security guards and a few dedicated workaholics getting an early start on their day. I was leaving through the parking garage when I heard voices echoing off the concrete walls. Familiar voices. Alara and Rick were standing next to her car, speaking in the hushed tones people use when they're planning something they don't want overheard. I ducked behind a concrete pillar and listened. "The restraining order gets filed Monday morning," Alara was saying. Jared's threatening behavior, the confrontation at Harper's office, the damage to your car. It's a clear pattern of escalating violence. And the photos? Perfect. The bruises look completely real. Dr. Martinez did excellent work. My chest tightened. Dr. Martinez, not the digital forensics expert I'd hired, but someone else entirely. Someone who specialized in creating fake evidence. What about the timing? Rick asked. Monday afternoon, right after the restraining order is filed, I hold a press conference. Domestic violence survivor speaking out against her abuser. The media will eat it up. And then? Then Jared spends the next 6 months fighting criminal charges while the company goes into receivership. By the time he's cleared, if he's cleared, there won't be anything left to fight over. I felt sick. They weren't just planning to destroy my reputation or steal my company. They were planning to have me arrested for crimes I'd never committed. Are you sure this will work? Rick sounded nervous. Rick, I've been planning this for a year. Every detail, every contingency. Jared thinks he's so smart, but he's never understood that intelligence without emotional awareness is just sophisticated stupidity. They talked for a few more minutes about logistics and timing, then got in their respective cars and left. I stood behind that concrete pillar for a long time after they were gone, trying to process what I'd just heard. A year. She'd been planning this for a year. Everything that had happened, the affair, the corporate coup, the media attacks, had been leading to this moment. The final trap that would destroy me completely. I called Morrison from my car. I need to see you immediately. And bring recording equipment. We're going to need evidence of everything that happens over the next few days. We met at his office, a cramped space above a bail bondsman in a part of town that specialized in second chances and last resorts. They're going to file a restraining order based on fabricated evidence, I told him. Fake photos, manufactured witnesses, the whole thing. Morrison leaned back in his chair and whistled softly. That's a serious accusation, Jared. If you're wrong about this, I'm not wrong. I heard them planning it. Did you record the conversation? No. I was too shocked to think clearly. Then we have a problem. Your word against theirs, and they've already painted you as the aggressor. I stared at the water stain on his office ceiling and tried to think. What if we could get them to admit it on tape? How? I don't know yet, but there has to be a way. Morrison studied me for a moment. Jared, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Have you ever threatened your wife? Ever put your hands on her in anger? Ever done anything that could be construed as domestic violence? Never. Not once. Because if you have, even a little bit, this whole thing is going to blow up in your face. Jim, in 15 years of marriage, I never raised my voice to her. The closest I ever came to physical contact during an argument was when I slammed a door. That's it. He nodded slowly. Okay. Then we need to be very careful about how we handle this. Because if they're willing to fabricate evidence of domestic violence, they're not playing games anymore. They're trying to destroy your life. I spent the weekend in a state of controlled panic, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I didn't leave my house except to walk around the lake, and even then I made sure Morrison's surveillance team could see me at all times. On Sunday evening, Kayla called. Dad, something's happening. Mom's been on the phone all day with lawyers and reporters, and she has these pictures. What kind of pictures? Pictures of her with bruises on her arms and face. She says you did it. But Dad, I know you didn't. The bruises look weird, like makeup or something. Kayla, listen to me very carefully. Your mother is going to say some things about me over the next few days. Terrible things. I need you to know that none of it is true. I know, Dad. I've lived with both of you my whole life. You're not violent. You're not even mean. You're just focused. I want you to stay away from your mother's apartment for a few days. Can you stay with friends? Why? Because I think she's about to do something that's going to hurt a lot of people, and I don't want you to get caught in the crossfire. Monday morning arrived like a funeral march. I was in my office by 7 a.m., trying to maintain some semblance of normal business operations while waiting for the inevitable. The call came at 10:15. "Mr. Solis, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the Metro Police. We need you to come down to the station to answer some questions regarding a complaint that's been filed against you." "What kind of complaint?" "Domestic violence and criminal threats. Can you be here within the hour?" I called my lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Voss, Linda's daughter, as it turned out, and met her at the police station. The detective was professional but clearly skeptical of my denials. She showed me photographs of Alara with bruises on her face and arms, a medical report documenting the injuries, and a sworn statement describing a pattern of escalating abuse. "Mrs. Solis says you've been threatening her since she filed for divorce," Detective Chen said. "She says you damaged her boyfriend's property, confronted her at work, and last Friday night you showed up at her apartment and physically assaulted her." "Detective, on Friday night I was at home. I have security camera footage that will prove it." "We'll need to see that footage." Patricia leaned forward. "Detective, my client is willing to cooperate fully with your investigation, but I want it on record that he categorically denies these allegations and will provide evidence to refute them." The interview lasted 2 hours. I answered every question honestly and provided documentation of my whereabouts for every incident Alara had described. But I could see in Detective Chen's eyes that she didn't believe me. The evidence looked compelling: photographs, medical reports, witness statements from Rick and Harper. When we left the police station, Patricia was blunt. "Jared, this is bad. Really bad. Even if we can prove you didn't do it, the damage to your reputation will be catastrophic." "Can we get the charges dismissed?" "Maybe, but it's going to take time, and time is something you don't have. The restraining order hearing is tomorrow morning, and after that, Alara is going to hold her press conference." That evening, I sat in my home office and stared at the lake, watching the sun set behind the trees. In less than 24 hours, I would officially become a pariah, an accused domestic abuser whose name would be associated with violence against women. Everything I'd built, everything I'd worked for, would be gone. My phone buzzed with a text from Morrison. "Got something. Meet me at the usual place in 1 hour." I drove to his office, hoping he'd found some way to prove the evidence was fabricated. What he showed me was better than I dared hope. "Your brother made a mistake," Morrison said, pulling up a video file on his computer. "He met with the doctor who created the fake injuries. Dr. Elena Martinez. Different from the forensics expert you hired. She specializes in special effects makeup for movies and TV." The video showed Rick entering a building downtown, then leaving an hour later with a manila envelope. I followed him after that meeting. He went straight to Alara's apartment. They spent 2 hours practicing her story, going over the details of each alleged incident. "Did you record that?" "Better. I got video of them staging the photographs." He showed me footage of Alara applying makeup to create realistic-looking bruises, while Rick took pictures from different angles. They discussed lighting and positioning like directors working on a film. "This is it," I said. "This proves the whole thing is fabricated. It proves they staged photographs. But Jared, there's something else you need to know." Morrison's expression was grim. "What?" "I found out why your wife has been planning this for a year. It's not just about the company or the divorce settlement." He pulled out a thick folder and placed it on his desk. "Alara's been embezzling money from the company for the past 3 years. Small amounts, carefully hidden, but it adds up to almost $2 million. I stared at the documents he showed me. Bank transfers, fake invoices, shell companies, an elaborate scheme to siphon money from Solace Corporation into accounts controlled by Alara. "She knew you'd eventually discover it," Morrison continued, "so she needed a way to destroy your credibility before you could expose her. If you're in jail for domestic violence, nobody's going to believe your accusations of embezzlement." Everything clicked into place. The affair, the corporate coup, the media attacks. They'd all been designed to set up this final gambit. Destroy me so completely that even if I discovered her theft, no one would take my accusations seriously. Jim, I need you to get this information to Detective Chen immediately. Already done. I sent everything to her an hour ago. My phone rang. Patricia Voss. Jared, we just got some very interesting news. The police want to interview your wife about potential fraud charges. Seems someone provided them with evidence of embezzlement. What does that mean for the domestic violence charges? It means Detective Chen is taking a much closer look at your wife's credibility. The restraining order hearing is still happening tomorrow, but now we have ammunition to fight back. I hung up and looked at Morrison. Is this enough? It's a start, but Jared, even if we prove she's lying about the domestic violence, the damage might already be done. Once these accusations are public, they tend to stick. Then we need to make sure the truth gets out first. I spent that night preparing for the fight of my life. Not just in court, but in the court of public opinion, because I was beginning to understand that this was never really about money or business or even revenge. This was about who would be left standing when the dust settled, and I had no intention of being the one on the ground. The restraining order hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. Tuesday morning. At 8:30, I was sitting in the courthouse lobby with Patricia, reviewing our strategy one final time, when Detective Chen approached us. Mr. Salas, I need to speak with you privately. Patricia started to object, but Chen held up her hand. It's not about the domestic violence allegations. It's about the fraud investigation. We stepped into an empty conference room, where Chen pulled out a tablet and showed me a video. This was recorded last night at your wife's apartment. The video showed Alara and Rick in what appeared to be a heated argument. The audio was clear enough to make out most of their conversation. You said the police wouldn't find the money, Alara was saying. How was I supposed to know they'd bring in forensic accountants? You told me Jared was too focused on the domestic violence charges to look at the financial stuff. Well, he obviously looked, or someone looked for him. So what do we do now? We stick to the plan. The restraining order hearing happens this morning, then the press conference this afternoon. By the time the fraud investigation gets serious, Jared will be so destroyed publicly that nobody will believe anything he says. Chen paused the video and looked at me. Mr. Salas, based on this conversation and the financial evidence we've reviewed, we're preparing to arrest your wife for embezzlement and fraud. The domestic violence charges against you are being dropped. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in days. There's more, Chen continued. Your brother's marketing company has been under federal investigation for wire fraud. The edited video he created and distributed appears to violate several federal statutes regarding defamation and conspiracy. What happens now? Now we coordinate arrests to happen simultaneously. We don't want them to have time to destroy evidence or flee. The hearing was postponed while the district attorney's office prepared the new charges. I spent the morning in Patricia's office, watching the news and waiting for the other shoe to drop. At 2 p.m., my phone started ringing with calls from reporters. Alara and Rick had been arrested simultaneously at her apartment. The charges included embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, and federal wire fraud violations. The evidence included the financial records Morrison had uncovered, the video of them staging the fake domestic violence photos, and the recorded conversation from the night before. But the story that dominated the news wasn't the arrests themselves. It was the revelation that the entire domestic violence case had been fabricated as part of an elaborate scheme to cover up embezzlement. Corporate CEO fabricates abuse, claims to hide theft, read the headline in the evening paper. The article included details about the fake bruises, the staged photographs, and the coordinated media campaign designed to destroy my reputation. It painted a picture of a woman so desperate to avoid accountability for her crimes that she was willing to trivialize real domestic violence by manufacturing false accusations. The public reaction was swift and brutal. Women's organizations that had initially supported Alara issued statements condemning her actions. The attorney who had appeared with her at the press conference withdrew from the case and donated her fee to a domestic violence shelter. Social media, which had been calling for my resignation just days earlier, was now demanding justice for the elaborate fraud perpetrated against me. But I wasn't celebrating yet. That evening, I received a call from Linda Voss. "Jared, we need to talk. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning." "About what?" "The criminal charges have been dropped, the embezzlement has been exposed, and the company's reputation is intact." "It's not about the criminal charges. It's about what happens next." The board meeting was unlike any I'd ever attended. The conference room was packed with not just board members but lawyers, accountants, and federal investigators. Linda called the meeting to order and got straight to the point. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to discuss the future of Solace Corporation in light of recent events. While Mr. Solace has been cleared of all criminal charges, the company has suffered significant damage over the past month." She pulled up a presentation showing client losses, stock price fluctuations, and employee departures. "We've lost 6 major clients, our stock price has dropped 30%, and 12 employees have resigned. The question before us is how to rebuild." Thomas Chen from legal spoke next. "From a liability standpoint, the company is exposed to potential lawsuits from clients who terminated contracts based on the false allegations against Mr. Solace. We're also facing possible defamation claims from employees who were implicated in the conspiracy." Jennifer Walsh presented the financial analysis. The embezzlement totaled $1.9 million over 3 years. While that's recoverable through insurance and asset seizure, the operational disruption has cost us an estimated $4 million in lost revenue. I listened to the presentations with growing unease. The numbers were worse than I'd realized. Finally, Linda looked at me. "Jared, the board recognizes that you've been the victim of an elaborate conspiracy, but we also have a fiduciary responsibility to our shareholders and stakeholders. The question is whether you're prepared to do what's necessary to rebuild this company." "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Complete restructuring, new leadership team, new board composition, new operational structure, essentially rebuilding from the ground up. With me as majority shareholder? That's up to you. We've received several acquisition offers from companies interested in our technology and client base. The offers are substantial, enough to provide full value for your shares and ensure the company's survival under new ownership." I stared around the room at faces I'd known for years, some sympathetic, some neutral, all waiting for my decision. "You're asking me to sell the company I built." "We're asking you to consider what's best for everyone involved," Linda said gently, "including yourself." I asked for a recess and walked out to the building's rooftop terrace. The city spread out below me, glass and steel and concrete stretching to the horizon. Somewhere down there, Ilara and Rick were sitting in jail cells, waiting for bail hearings that might never come. I thought about the past month, about everything I'd lost and everything I'd learned, about the difference between winning a battle and winning a war. My phone buzzed with a text from Kayla. "Dad, whatever you decide, I'm proud of you for fighting back. Love you." That decided it. I went back into the conference room and looked around the table at the board members who were waiting for my answer. "Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate your concern for the company's future. But I didn't build Solace Corporation to sell it when things got difficult. I built it to last." I pulled out my own presentation, one I'd prepared the night before. "Here's what we're going to do. First, we're going to use the insurance settlement from the embezzlement to fund a complete rebranding campaign. New name, new image, new market position." I clicked to the next slide. "Second, we're going to turn this entire experience into a competitive advantage. We're going to become the company that survived corporate sabotage and came back stronger. The company that proved integrity matters more than short-term profits." Another slide. "Third, we're going to implement the most comprehensive ethics and transparency program in our industry. Every decision, every contract, every hire will be subject to independent oversight." I looked around the room, seeing surprise and skepticism in equal measure. Finally, we're going to use our experience to help other companies protect themselves from similar attacks. We're going to create a consulting division that specializes in corporate security and crisis management. Linda leaned forward. Jared, that's ambitious, but do you really think you can rebuild trust after everything that's happened? Linda, 3 weeks ago, everyone thought I was a corporate bully who threatened women. Today, everyone knows I was the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. Public opinion can change quickly when the truth comes out. And if it doesn't work, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But I'm not giving up on this company. Not now, not ever. The board voted to support my restructuring plan by a margin of 6-1. Over the next 6 months, we rebuilt Solace Corporation from the ground up. The rebranding campaign, built around themes of integrity and resilience, generated significant positive media coverage. The transparency program attracted new clients who valued ethical business practices. The consulting division became profitable within its first quarter. Most importantly, we survived. Alara and Rick were both convicted on multiple charges. Alara received a sentence of 8 years in federal prison. Rick got 6 years. Harper, who cooperated with prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence, served 18 months and was required to pay full restitution for her fraudulent contracts. The company they'd tried to destroy became stronger than it had ever been. But the real victory wasn't financial or professional, it was personal. I learned that being underestimated can be an advantage, that fighting dirty sometimes means fighting smart, that the people who try to destroy you often destroy themselves in the process. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's survival. It's success. It's proving that no matter how elaborate their schemes or how ruthless their tactics, they couldn't break what I'd built. They couldn't break me. On the 1-year anniversary of that first email terminating my contract, I was sitting in my office, the same office Rick had posed in so smugly, when Linda Voss knocked on my door. Jared, there's someone here to see you. Kayla walked in, wearing a business suit and carrying a resume. Dad, I'm graduating early, and I want to work here. Are you sure? After everything that happened? Because of everything that happened, you showed me what it means to fight for something you believe in, what it means to stand up to people who try to tear you down. I looked at my daughter, seeing strength and determination in her eyes that reminded me of myself at her age. Well, I said, we could use someone in the ethics and compliance department. She grinned. Perfect. When do I start? How about right now? As Kayla settled into the chair across from my desk, I realized that Alara had been wrong about one thing. She'd said I saw people as resources to be managed rather than human beings to be valued. Maybe that had been true once, but not anymore. Looking at my daughter, preparing to join the company her father had fought to save, I understood that the best victories aren't the ones where you destroy your enemies. They're the ones where you build something better than what they tried to take away. Something worth fighting for, something worth keeping, something that lasts.